course of the past few generations, it has come to feel as if the Jews around the world in general, and Jews in the United States in particular, have finally eradicated much of the exclusion, persecution, and alienation that has plagued our people for centuries, if not millennia. To be sure, there have always been and will always continue to be plenty of groups that will continue to hate us. But for the past few generations, we have been blessed with a remarkable rise in status, respect, and acceptance. Global hatred towards Jews just 3 generations ago caused many of our grandparents to flee their places of birth and find refuge here in the United States and in the land of Israel. Over the course of the past 75 years or so, we have risen from the ashes of the Holocaust and global anti-Semitism to become one of the most successful minorities in the world. In Israel, we can take great pride in the fact that in a relatively short period of time, Israel has become one of the greatest centers for technology, industry, medicine, agriculture, and science the world has ever seen. It is not only a haven for our people, but in fact, it is the most democratic, forward-thinking nation in the entire Middle East. Within just 3 generations, Israel has become the pride and the strength of the Jewish people, the epicenter for technology and advancement and for global innovation, and one of the most reliable strategic allies to democracies across the globe. Here in the United States, our accomplishments as a community are equally, if not more, impressive. Over the course of 3 generations, we seem to have succeeded in breaching the final boundaries of exclusion from the American mainstream. The exclusionary practices so prevalent just a few generations ago, which kept our grandparents out of certain social country clubs, or from serving as doctors in non-Jewish hospitals, or from entering various colleges across the country. These exclusionary practices don't exist anymore. The blatant anti-Semitism that existed as recently as my own parents' generation today seem to be somewhat a vestige of the past. In fact, until very recently, the American Jewish community has felt relatively safe and fully accepted. Think about it for a moment. Jewish culture has become fully mainstreamed in America. Our food has become central to American cuisine. Bagels, lox, knishes. You can find these things on menus at just ordinary American restaurants. Jewish humor is pervasive in the world of entertainment, and Yiddish, which was once the language of the filthy Jew in Europe, is common parlance in the United States today. Words like schlep, shtick, and schmear, which I talked about last night. These are things that would come up in conversation all the time. And who would ever have imagined that 50 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, a Seder would take place in the White House? That our presidents, including our current President Biden, our past President Trump, would have machatonim, Jewish in-laws and Jewish grandchildren. That we would have a vice president married to a Jew. And consider how many Jews are part of the leadership of the current administration. The Chief of Staff, the Secretary of State, Director of National Intelligence, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Treasury Secretary, Attorney General, Deputy Director of the CIA, Director of the CDC, and more. All Jewish. All of them. And when you think about it, when you really think about it, we have come a long way. yet, even though our children today have experienced a fraction of the hate that was out in the open just a few generations ago, the truth is that anti-Semitism has never gone away. It may have moved to the fringes of society, but it has lingered, and it has festered there like a cancer. And for a variety of reasons, it has emerged again. Before we can explore how to respond to this aggressive rise of hatred against us, we need to take a moment and figure out what is going on. One thing this is not, and this is something that everyone here and everyone streaming needs to take to heart and mind right now. This is not the Holocaust. In recent years, with the rise of anti-Semitic activities going all around the world, there's been a very flippant use of and comparisons to the Holocaust. But this is not what's going on. And by continuing to compare what is going on today to the Holocaust, not only belittles the Holocaust, but it also ignores the inroads and coalitions of goodwill that we have developed over the course of the past few decades. Therefore, we need to be very, very careful to monitor our language and monitor ourselves when we talk about and interact with others with regards to the anti-Semitism of today. We need to refrain from comparing political figures to Nazis. We need to avoid making claims that policies today are similar to those of the Holocaust. We need to be acutely aware that such hyperbole and exaggeration can be detrimental to our goals and can distract us from really dealing effectively with the rising tide of hatred that we hope to completely defeat. So how might we begin to understand the nature of what's going on and this rising tide of hatred of Jews across the globe? Today's anti-Semitism is being drawn from all parts of the political and cultural spectrum. In the words of Rabbi Emil Hirsch of the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue in New York City, anti-Semitism is a phenomenon of both the right and the left. It always has been that way. For the anti-Semitism on the right, Jews invented communism. For the anti-Semites on the left, Jews are rapacious capitalists. Both think that for Jews, it's all about money and exploitation. Both accuse Jews of disloyalty. Both boycott Jews and Jewish businesses. Both think that Jews can manipulate society and that there is some kind of international plot pulling the strings of the world for the enrichment of the Jewish people. Thus, Rabbi Hirsch points out, Jews have the capacity to do something that no other group in the world can do. Somehow, Jews are able to unite the extreme right and the extreme left. While these two groups may be diametrically opposed on everything else in the world, they overlap in agreement on one single issue. They both hate the Jews. One uses the slogan, "Jews will not replace us." The other, "Israel will not replace us." The anti-Semites that emerge from the right-wing ideologies are violent and lethal. These violent racists, which are often referred to as white nationalists in the United States, hate everyone who is not white, and they do not think Jews are white. They hate African Americans, they hate Muslim Americans, they hate Hispanics, they hate immigrants, they hate all minorities. They are violent, and there is nothing that they desire to do to hide their hatred or their violence in any way, shape, or form. These are the groups that burst into Jewish institutions with the expressed intent to kill us. In the past few years, we have experienced this vile, horrible kind of hatred in Pittsburgh, in Poway, in Charlottesville. They write poisonous manifestos, and they plaster social media with malevolence. On the left, the hatred is intentionally nuanced. It is couched in various forms of progressive causes that they claim to be standing up for the oppressed. But when the reality of their work is fully uncovered and completely unpacked, there is a common pattern which is inextricably linked to a fierce hatred of Israel. The anti-Semitism from the left accuses Israel, and therefore by association the Jewish people, as being genocidal, fascist, ethnic cleansing, Nazi, rogue, colonial, apartheid, and the list goes on. These offensive terms and erroneous claims are preached across a broad spectrum of progressive and liberal platforms, from the rallies at college campuses to the floors of Congress. The claims they make against Israel are inaccurate, misinformed, and egregiously and intentionally hypocritical. When such malice is waged against one single country, when there is a relentless global claim that Israel, the only Jewish nation in the world, is singularly the most criminal state in the world, there is something going on in this movement. And when these statements are made, and when these sentiments are expressed again and again and again, that we are the worst, there is going to be, and continues to be, rippling effects against the Jews across the globe. Israel, for these left-wing groups, is a malignancy that must be removed. For these groups, Israel is portrayed as the absolute worst human rights violators ever seen. Worse than Saudi Arabia, worse than Syria, worse than Turkey, Russia, China, Cambodia, Iran, Somalia, Afghanistan, North Korea. We're the worst. And because these groups consider Israel to be such horrible human rights violators, they feel and consider themselves to be 100% justified in their accusations and their harmful actions. They see themselves as defenders of the oppressed, and therefore explicitly deny that they are anti-Semitic. We're not anti-Semitic. We're just against Israel's terrible policies and terrible behaviors. In their eyes, they are freedom fighters. They are civil rights warriors. They are humanitarians. But let me be clear here, and I am, as many of you know, on the left. I'll admit it, proudly. But let me say this here clearly. When Israel is held to standards which are expected by no other country in the world, when Israel is to blame for every problem that emanates from the region, there is something very wrong. And these groups need to be called out for what they are. They are anti-Semitic, period. The result of the rhetoric, policies, and actions of the anti-Israel left is that American Jews have become a target. We have become an extension of the wars. We are perceived in light of bad behaviors of our Jewish state. This spillover of perceptions constitutes the core of left-wing Jew-hating. And for many American Jews who involve themselves with liberal and progressive causes, The vitriol has reached a toxic tipping point. It is not uncommon for our college students to go off to college and then find themselves surrounded by slogans like Free Palestine, Stop Ethnic Cleansing, Israel is killing innocent people. And this is just the clean versions of what they have to experience. The slogans are couched in concerns for social justice. And this is what makes the situation for progressive Jews so incredibly difficult. My daughter Lily was a proud activist for many causes throughout her college years. She was one who stood up for the environment. She stood up for the downtrodden. She stood up for the hungry and the homeless. And time again, as she got involved with various progressive college efforts, she would butt heads again and again with Israel bashing. Kyle Frank, who is a proud graduate of HCRJ's religious school, called me just a few months ago asking me how he should respond to the growing animosity toward Israel and the Jews on his campus. He's in law school. You'd think that at that level, things would be different. The truth is, our college kids are facing very real threats, and it is increasingly difficult to be outwardly Jewish on many campuses today. Yossi Klein Halevi, who is with the Shalom Hartman Institute, describes the climate for American young Jews for liberal causes in the following way. He says, young Jews in America are experiencing the return of the conditionality of acceptance in America. The conditionality of acceptance. What is this? These words define the reality of those in college today, and many of us also who involve ourselves in marches for important causes that we believe in. That we need to prove something. That there's a condition on our involvement in fighting for justice in this world. And what is that condition? We see it again and again. We need to somehow repudiate and reject Israel. We need to prove ourselves in order to be fighters for justice and oppression. If we don't cut the mustard, we're not included in the group. So what are we to do as we face the vile, violent anti-Semitism from the right and this nuanced anti-Semitism from the left? Well, first of all, we need to start to become more unified as a Jewish community. We need to recognize that anti-Semitism is not just coming from the left, and it's not just coming from the right, it's coming from both sides of our political spectrum. And the partisan finger-pointing that we constantly have been doing over the course of the last few years does nothing for us. It's time to stop accusing one political party, the one that we didn't vote for, as being bad for the Jews. Each side, Democrats and Republicans alike, do things that compromise the safety of our people. Each side, Democrats and Republicans alike, say things that promote hate and perpetuate prejudice. Both sides are guilty, and we need to stop ignoring this uncomfortable truth. We need to speak out. We need to speak up. Whether we voted for a Republican or a Democrat, we have the ongoing responsibility as Jews to be vigilant and call anti-Semitism out every time it rears its ugly head. One of the most disturbing trends to have evolved in our country over the course of this past decade has been selective blindness and selective deafness to the anti-Semitism coming from the political parties of our liking or disliking. For reasons linked to our own political leanings, Jewish Democrats and Jewish Republicans alike downplay extremely disturbing behaviors and extremely hurtful, heartful, and hateful rhetoric. Don't worry. Words don't matter. That's just the way he talks. Don't worry. She's not against Israel. She's just from a different culture. Enough. Words matter. They matter from the left, and they matter from the right. So today I implore all of us to put our politics aside. Every time and any time hateful rhetoric against the Jewish people or the state of Israel arises, we need to be together. We need to speak up. We need to speak out. We need to pledge to be more dedicated to this process. So I ask you to pledge with me here today that we will remain vigilant. Pledge with me to put your politics aside when we hear or you see something that is expressed as some semblance of hatred against us. On this matter, all Jews need to stick together. Now, standing together needs to be more than merely making pledges with words. We need to have a plan of action. We need concrete ways to respond. And to this end, we have incredible tools at our disposal. Organizations like the Anti-Defamation League and the American Jewish Committee are there, whose missions include the ongoing advocacy on behalf of the well-being and safety of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. These resources are really powerful and helpful for us as adults. But what about our youth? What about our youth who are extremely susceptible to the exposure of anti-Jewish content on social media? What about our college students who, as I said, are being constantly bombarded with stuff that is hateful toward them? They're all so ill-prepared to defend themselves against anti-Israel and anti-Semitic words and actions. In this age of so much hate, we have come to understand that our youth need the proper tools and vocabulary to combat this in the real world at a much younger age. They need ways to prepare and to promote Jewish identities on platforms that speak to them and that are common to youth culture. In response to this growing need, I pledge to everyone in our congregation and to the city of Houston as well that we as a congregation will be launching a number of efforts designed to help our teens and our young adults to combat anti-Semitism in ways that are useful to them. These new programs will use social media platforms like Snapchat and TikTok to help them easily disseminate positive information about Judaism and Israel. And if anyone here has a child or a grandchild, a nephew or a niece, if anyone out there knows people who are dedicated to social media platforms, I invite you to be part of this process. I need names. I need those skills. We're going to get at it very soon. A second prong in our attack against this battle of hatred waged against us needs to be not so reactive, but it needs to be proactive. We need to be as proactive as possible in generating Jewishness in this world. If we are going to succeed in expanding a positive image of our faith and our people, we are going to need to find ways to wage an affirmative battle about who we are. This kind of affirmative approach demands that we joyfully and proudly embrace our culture, our heritage, and our values. Rabbi Jonathan Blake of Westchester Reformed Temple in Scarsdale, New York, argues that the best response to anti-Semitism is each of us. We are the antidote to the anti-Semitism infecting our world today. We won't win this fight, he says, just by reinforcing our facilities and training our staff with cutting-edge security. If we really want to stand up against anti-Semitism, if we really want to make a difference, then we need to live so as to proclaim that being Jewish matters. That Judaism is a noble and beautiful heritage worthy of living, really living with joy, with vigor, and that Judaism gives us powerful tools for addressing the ills pursuing an aching world. In other words, we are the best ambassadors for our faith. Many of our neighbors have never met a Jew. Their misconceptions about who we are rooted in stereotypes and perpetuated on social media. They have no idea what we might believe or stand for. Therefore, in the face of this rising tide of anti-Semitism, our capacity to be a bit louder and a bit prouder as Jews may help us build stronger, healthier networks of allies and friends who will have our backs and stand with us in solidarity. One way to promote this kind of collective support is to invite our neighbors into the sukkah, or to our homes on Hanukkah, or to our homes for a Seder or a Shabbat dinner. Many of us have already done these things, but they go a long way in promoting fellowship and trust and understanding. They go a long way in promoting a good image of the Jew in this world. Reaching out to the world around us also creates opportunities to see and understand that anti-Semitism is not just a Jewish issue. When we gather with and extend ourselves to friends in our community, we are able to advertise the fact that expressions of hatred against any single community, not just the Jewish community, threatens the soul of America itself. As we ask others to stand with us, we must also commit ourselves to standing with them. People of color, the LGBTQ plus community, the immigrant communities of the United States, and those who feel pushed to the sidelines. These are all part of a united front that we must build and strengthen together. In a recent blog on the rise of anti-Semitism, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who is the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, wrote the following: "During these times when our Jewish community feels vulnerable, there is a natural inclination to want to hunker down in our buildings, separating ourselves from the wider world. But if we have learned anything from Pittsburgh and Poway, it is that to be safe, we need strong bonds, not just among the Jews everywhere, but with other marginalized groups who are likely to find themselves as victims of hate crimes as well. Also with civil society, political leaders, law enforcement, and especially with other faith communities." Rabbi Jacobs reminds us that anti-Semitism has been around for millennia, but the kind of interfaith solidarity that we have helped create throughout the past 3 generations is something new. Previously, when Jews were victims of murderous anti-Semitic attacks, it was rare for anyone to stand with us or around us. Today, we show up for each other. This is what Rabbi Jacobs calls sacred allyships. And this is exactly what we need to be doing. If we can find a way to work together across faiths, across cultures, across race, across politics, we can begin to confront the explosion of hate crimes and hateful rhetoric in collective and effective ways. Finally, our battle against anti-Semitism must include an ongoing assessment of ourselves. We need to monitor our own behaviors and the inner workings of our souls. We need to make sure that as we confront the hatred directed against us, we do not succumb to the pitfalls of prejudice, intolerance, and bigotry. We need to make sure that the hate waged against us does not arouse any kind of hatefulness within us. In this age of so much anger and violence, we must constantly be aware of our own passions. Anger can be contagious. Violence begets violence. Therefore, if we are not careful, our responses to this rising tide of hate can make our hearts highly susceptible to the poisonous nature of hate itself. Today is the Day of Atonement. As the holiest day of the Jewish calendar year, this day implores us to find ways to seek unity and a sense of at-one-ment with God and our neighbors. Today is a day of personal accountability. Through the prayers and our reflections that we make today, we devote ourselves to owning our own contributions to what is right and to what is wrong in this world. Today we are called upon to see ourselves as leaders of our faith, ambassadors of our people. And while we may be well aware that the hatred and violence that has been waged against us will likely not disappear in the near future, today we commit ourselves to the task of generating hope. Yom Kippur beckons us to see the future through the lens of faith, not fear. It challenges us to act and respond from a place of empathy, not indifference. And it implores us to seek unity, not conflict. And so, as we commit ourselves to the overwhelming task of responding to the rise of anti-Semitism around us, we are called upon by a force that transcends us to stand in unity and to open ourselves to the possibility of hope, to remain diligent and to refrain from putting our heads in the sand, to remain positive, honorable, and loving ambassadors of Judaism, to dialogue with our youth and our neighbors in honest, informed, and truthful ways regarding the state of Israel, to speak out and stand up against injustice and hatred of all kinds, and to continue to cultivate sacred allyships with people of all races, faiths, identities, and cultures. This day calls us to stand together. May we do so quickly, with diligence and unity. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.